Hello and welcome to Game Talk. I'm hoping that this one will actually be short due to work and life circumstances. I don't want to spend 3 hours editing the video like I did last time, but that is largely dependent on how much I say the word So, let's try to cut down on that, he says to himself. So, last week I played Overwatch. And I also selected a game to play for next time called First Squadron. So that's going to show up in the next video. But for this video, I think I'm going to review Lifeweaver. Lifeweaver is the 37th hero in Overwatch. And he's fine, I guess. It's kind of complicated. I'm gonna actually review him the same way I would review a game, because might as well. I don't really have that many other frameworks, and I am too lazy to figure out another one. So, Lifeweaver is a new support for Overwatch. He's got a number of abilities. His primary fire is this kind of blossom he has in his hand that auto targets his friends. He has a second weapon, and I'm not saying secondary fire for a specific reason. He has a second weapon that fires thorns and does, a little bit of damage. A lot of people reference the Needler from Halo, and it looks like the Needler from Halo, and it's not behaved the same. It would actually be really cool if it behaved the same, but nope. His actual secondary fire is a platform. Not secondary fire. Yes, secondary fire. Sorry, I'm the words. Secondary fire is a platform that both enemies and friends can use to go up into the air. He, in addition to all of those abilities, he has the ability to pull his allies out of danger. This is on a long cooldown, so you can't do it all the time, but the trolling potential is definitely there. It's definitely saved my bacon a couple of times, but also I can just see how frustrating it can be to try to make a play as a player and then have your support player be like, nope, I'm pulling you out. Either on purpose or by accident. It's unclear. His ultimate is a giant tree. It is destructible. It does pulses of healing, and it's pretty. So let's start there. I'm going to do a criticism sandwich where I'm going to talk about a thing I liked, the thing I don't like, and then a thing I like again, because it's not just all negative things with Lifeweaver. And we'll start with aesthetics. I think he looks really good. I think he looks distinctive. He's probably the first, actually pretty boy that we've gotten in Overwatch. A lot of the other characters, the ones who show their face, are, if they're male, they're usually a little bit more grizzled. I would call them leaning more towards handsome and daddy energy than towards, hot boy band energy. And Lifeweaver is definitely hitting that. His, all of his stuff is fairly distinctive. No one else uses flowers the way he does. So at no point do I look at the platform and think, yeah, that could belong to someone else or anyone else on the team. So you can see, and between that and the tree, you're like, oh, okay, we've briefly dropped into a magical forest. That's cool. But in terms of, yeah, that's it. His aesthetics are cool. He's hot. Blizzard nailed that. So let's talk about something I don't like, and that is a combination of mechanics and technology. I normally don't talk about technology because normally it's just does my keyboard work? And the answer is for Lifeweaver, I'm very glad I'm not playing on controller, because I believe some of the weirdness of how he was set up is because controllers only have so many buttons, and his abilities are right on the edge of like too many abilities. So earlier I mentioned that he has his thorns on as a second weapon and not a secondary fire. To access his only means of damage, you have to actually switch to the weapon, which there's another character like this. Her name is Mercy. She works the same way, but you're not really expected to switch to Mercy's weapon except in times of dire distress. You're you're more likely to break out the weapon when you're. I mean, sometimes people do that and they just like start shooting, but your healing and your damage boost is enough activity for you to use as you're like zipping around and bouncing around as Mercy that you don't really need to switch to your gun unless the opportunity is there. And she and Torbjorn, I believe, are the only heroes who have a second weapon to even switch to up until Lifeweaver arrived. If I'm thinking it through, yeah, none of the tanks and none of the other DPS and none of the other supports have like a second weapon to switch to. So it was a mechanic that really only Mercy and Torbjorn were using up until this point. And the fact that it's all of a sudden central to how Lifeweaver works is just so weird. And they arranged the buttons in a way that just was so counterintuitive. So usually secondary fire is on the right mouse button on the right hand mouse, and when I went to do that on Lifeweaver, you end up launching the platform, and I just it hurt my brain, so I had to go in and like rebind everything so that it made sense to me again. And he doesn't have an E ability, or I think no, he doesn't. I don't think he really has an E ability, or I rearranged things so he didn't have an E ability. So I changed that to switching weapons so that was a little smoother and a little easier for me to switch between. But he would benefit from his weapon working more like Moira or Baptiste than a thing that you sort of have to like think to switch to, because no other character works like that. I think the potential for trolling is there. I'm not super concerned about it yet. I think what's happening is that no one really knows how to play him or where he really fits, so we can only think of the really obvious things for him to do. And you're as a ally of Lifeweaver, you don't really know what to expect, like how he's going to use it, when he's going to use it. And as Lifeweaver, you don't necessarily know when you're going to use it. I talked to a friend about this, and I think that this is a problem that's kind of unique to supports, where you have a useful ability and you'd like to use it as often as you can, but often it's just dumb to use it. I had the same problem with Kiriko. It's less trolly, but I would jump in using her teleport ability and just like mistime everything. So I wouldn't save the person that I jumped in to try and save. I'd waste the ability that I was trying to use to save them, and I would just be alone in the middle of the enemy team, a small Japanese woman with tiny little knives. So I think that a lot of supports, you can sort of waste your resources that way, and Lifeweaver just happens to be able to waste your resource and his resource, and also pull a person like way out of the position that they had chosen for themselves, sometimes by accident. So I think that's I think the combination of just like how I don't envy console players when they try to play Lifeweaver on controller, and he's just kind of a lot of utility, just so much utility, and not very much healing and a clunky damage thing. So I think one of those things needs to be mitigated. To switch back to things I really like how he fits in the narrative. Where Overwatch is not great on dropping lore, but two things really stand out. The first thing is that Lifeweaver is actually a contemporary and a colleague of Symmetra. They're all contemporaries of each other, but he actually went to the same academy as Symmetra. He worked for the same corporation as Symmetra, and his powers are actually based on the same technology as her powers. So it's when people keep saying, "Oh, make Symmetra a support again," it's like, yeah, they did. His name is Lifeweaver. You're welcome, I guess. And they actually have good interactions talking about their place in the world and what the work that they're doing. So I like that aspect. And the other important narrative aspect is that his background is that he's the scion of a rich family, one of the more powerful families behind this car. And he left that family behind because he was concerned that, I mean, he was losing touch. He wanted to go out and touch nature, touch grass, as it were, and he found out that the grass was on fire and then being trampled by boots. So he decided to shift to healing both of those things, and became an outlaw in the process. And that story is actually very similar to Ash's. I don't think Overwatch usually comes up with truly novel stories, but they do give you a chance to see these cool, distinctive characters interact with each other. And I believe I don't think I'm making this up, but I believe Lifeweaver has an interaction with Ash where they talk about how, like, they talk about the fact that they both left these rich families and have now become outlaws. Ash has become, more of a straight up criminal. I don't think she does anything for the sake of humanity, but Lifeweaver has, they're still both outlaws in the eyes of the world. So that's pretty cool. Anything else I wanted to talk about? I didn't end up playing any other random games. I don't usually do that on Overwatch weeks. And yeah, so the next game that I'm going to talk about is First Squadron. I am cheating a bit. It is very short, but I did want a short game after playing the Outer Worlds for multiple weeks. Yeah, didn't really follow up on that thing, did I? Till next time.